Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Your Inner Spark. I'm Lana, and I am on a mission to help women eradicate shame so that they can step into their full potential. Today, we have a very, very special guest with us. Not only does our guest have an extremely powerful story to share, but she is also my very, very best friend. So, welcome, Lisa. I am so grateful to be sitting in this conversation with you today.
I am grateful to be here and honored to have been asked.
So, even though you're my best friend, I still have to ask you this question. Lisa, when is the first time you felt your inner spark?
Well, I would say I'm still working on that. It's still developing, but I would say probably the beginning of last year. A lot of you know I'm a competitive bodybuilder, and I took some time away from the stage. I took a couple of years off, and upon taking that time off, I realized that I had been kind of escaping other areas of my life. And by stepping away from the stage, I had to really take a look at myself and deal with some things that I had been just kind of escaping from. And one thing that I found was lacking in my life was human connection. I really wanted to form some human connections, and escaping through prepping for competitions and just always, being on the grind. It wasn't giving me what I wanted in that aspect. So I would say partway through the year last year, I realized in order to attain what I wanted, I had to start living more authentically and start sharing more of my life and start talking about things that brought me shame or things that, weren't so pretty to look at, and start looking inward. And so last year, I spent a good portion of last year looking inward, and yeah, that's how it started, and it's still continuing. I would say my spark is still developing. It's a tiny little spark right now, but it's getting bigger.
I love that. And I think the spark is giant because I get to witness it on a daily basis. But if it's only going to keep getting brighter, I'm along for the ride. So today we are going to be talking about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. And I'm going to let you take it away, Lisa. I first just kind of want you to share um, your story. I mean, an overarching view of your story and take us back to the beginning and just dive right in.
Okay, so we're diving right into
We're diving right
addiction.
in.
So addiction started pretty young for me. Back before I was a competitive bodybuilder, I was a competitive gymnast. Up until high school. We're talking like very serious, competing every weekend, leaving school early, doing some studies from home. I had a very serious life. And when I decided to leave gymnastics, it kind of left a gaping hole in my life. And I think when I got into high school and I started to live life like the rest of the kids were living, I just there was always something missing. And, I had some stuff going on at home too. And I think I experimented with drugs to kind of escape that and kind of fill that void. It started with just, marijuana, like a lot of kids do. And it quickly progressed into harder stuff throughout high school. And after I graduated high school, it really progressed. And next thing you know, I'm a full blown meth addict and was caught up in addiction for almost a decade after high school. So my actual usage was longer than that, but I would say the serious problem was meth, and it was for almost a decade. During that time, I just kind of disappeared from my family and friends. I just removed myself. Didn't really talk about it with my family. I mean, probably deep down they might have known, but nothing was ever really talked about. So I was able to continue living that way. And I guess I was kind of like a somewhat functional addict. I would have jobs. I would hold down a job for a while and then I'd eventually lose it. I always had a rocky home life, always had a rocky living situation. But yeah, that continued on until I was 27 years old. We're talking daily addiction. And a lot of people are shocked to hear that I was a meth addict, but I'm telling you, it can happen to anyone. And just as easy as it can happen to anyone, anyone can overcome it.
Thank you so much for sharing with us and being so vulnerable. I think one of the reasons why you are such a shining beacon of light is the fact that you have faced some demons, you know? So what do you feel like was that turning point for you, if you don't mind sharing? Like, what was that point where you're like, I want to choose something different for myself?
Well, it was kind of a culmination of a few different things. Like I said, my living situation was always rocky. There was nothing new with that. But by the time I decided to get clean, I actually had my own apartment. I had a pretty stable job. I was doing okay, but I was in a very rocky relationship. And it was right around the time that Facebook came out. And everyone can knock on social media all they want, but there was a thing about Facebook that actually helped me realize where I was at in life and how I was not in the right place. I saw all my old friends from high school and these girls that I used to be best friends with living these wonderful lives. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I really took a step back and like looked at my life, and I was in a toxic relationship, and I was, working jobs that didn't fulfill me. And, yeah, another thing, that toxic relationship got violent, it got real bad. And, at one point I was pretty beat up, and that was another wake up call for me. And then the final thing, one of my front teeth started failing, and I had to get a root canal on a front tooth, and I was like basically losing one of my front teeth. And you can't really hide that you're a meth addict when your teeth start falling out of the front of your face, So I would say a culmination of those things. I just finally decided I didn't want to do it anymore, and I just had to change everything. I quit my job. I moved out of my apartment. I asked my parents if I could move in with them, and they didn't ask me any questions. Nobody in my family asked me any questions. They were just welcoming and welcomed me back open arms. And I changed my phone number. I just changed everything and just quit cold turkey. I didn't go to rehab or anything. I did utilize NA, even though I kept it very secret. We never talked about it in my family. They didn't ask any questions. They were just happy that I was back around. And I'm lucky I had the resources. I had somewhere to go to make that change. But yeah.
Well, wow. Every time I hear that story, because I've heard it, I've heard you share that with me a couple times now, and I know this about you, but just hearing it again, I'm always so impressed by your strength, because I always wonder, like, would I have the strength to be able to have pulled myself out of something like that, something as deep as active addiction? Because as most of you know, I've been impacted by addiction for a good chunk of my life. And yeah, it's a beast. It is a beast. So I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for making very big changes to catapult yourself into something that's more in alignment for Lisa. So when it comes to your family, you said that you guys didn't really talk about things very often. And I know that your family has been a huge support system for you. Do you feel like now speaking openly about the fact that you struggled with addiction in your past has helped you overcome some of the shame around it, or how has it impacted you talking about this?
Definitely has helped me overcome the shame. Like I would say after I'd be friends with someone for like a year or two, I would open up and tell them about it. This is like in the past. I still don't really have the conversations with my family, even though I came out on social media and spoke about it on social media. It's still not really talked about in my family, but I'm finding the more I talk about it, the more I share about it. There's a lot of people out there. So many other people reached out to me like, look, I struggled with addiction too. And, I'm making more connections, and people relate to it. Even though a lot of people were shocked to find out that, yeah, I used to be a meth addict. I mean, a lot of people have struggled with addiction, whether it be alcohol or a different drug, a lot of us have struggled with this, or people that maybe aren't an addict, they have been close to someone in their life that is an addict, and everyone can relate in some way, shape, or form. And some people, that still are struggling have reached out to me, and I like to, be there for them and do my best to offer advice. I'm not a therapist and I'm not an addictions counselor, but, I'm always there and my DMs are always open for anyone that needs to talk. So I feel like it has definitely helped open me up and cultivate deeper connections with other humans. And it's encouraged me by doing that. I've been encouraged to share other parts of me that I used to be ashamed to talk about and share. And like I said to you before, my heart has been blasted wide open this year, partially thanks to you. And it's just been nothing but a wonderful experience for me. I mean, there's been hard times, of course, and it's hard to put yourself out there and to be vulnerable, but it's so worth it in the end.
Yeah, I think that's why we've connected, because we're both on this path of just like, this is who we are, take it or leave it, But it is so true. Addiction impacts so many of us, and addiction is something that there's so much stigma and there's so much shame around. And I think it's so easy for us to sit here and say, oh, well, that could never be me, even looking at, and in Portland, for example, or even here in San Diego where I'm at, but across the US, there's a homelessness crisis right now, and there's a drug epidemic, there's a mental health crisis, and it's so easy for us to drive by in our cozy little cars or look outside and our cozy little houses and judge people that are in worse situations than us. And I think that's the part for me, witnessing my own family members really struggle with addiction. It gave me such perspective that I really recognize it can happen to anybody. It can happen to me. It can happen to somebody that I love. It can happen to you. And instead of continuing to cultivate shame surrounding this subject, the more that we talk about it, hopefully we can break that stigma so people can seek treatment without feeling embarrassed about it,
Yeah. Yeah, and it can happen to anyone. There were periods of time in my life when I was homeless, sleeping on the side of a school on the pavement, like it can literally happen to anyone, and you never know what that person went through to get there. Or, I came across people that were raised by addicts. They literally knew no other way of life. And then, of course, they become an addict themselves. You never know what someone went through, and how they got to where they're at. I agree 100%. You never know what someone went through and how they got to where they're at.
Absolutely. So, in addition to obviously your family support was a huge component of your journey in recovery, what habits, factors do you feel like helped you be successful in your recovery journey?
Well, I did go to NA for like the first 2 years until I felt like I kind of outgrew it, but I still felt like there was always something missing. And I honestly feel like that has been an issue since I quit gymnastics. So I found fitness. I started running in 2013. So about 3 years after I got clean, I started running and I fell in love with it. And it was just like, it was my new drug of choice. And I was so happy with it. And then shortly after starting running, I found weight training, and weight training was like even better. And I slowly transitioned from a runner that weight trains to a weightlifter that runs, to now I barely ever run, barely ever, unless, it's like really raining and I want to get to my car fast. But I would say fitness is my anti-drug and a really good vice, and it's a healthy obsession. I mean, you don't want to use it to escape. Like I said, I have found myself using it to escape in the past, but it is a healthy outlet. And I believe 100% that everybody should give it a shot, and so in whatever way you works for you. Like the way that I do fitness is not going to work for everybody, whether it's CrossFit, whether it's walking, whether it's triathlons, running, you name it. Just any form of fitness is really good to pour yourself into coming out of addiction, I would say.
Yeah, I think finding healthy habits in general can help you pull you out of so many different situations, not just addiction, because while I've never personally struggled with addiction to a substance of any sort, I feel like fitness is what pulled me out of like toxic relationships, and this abusive pattern almost with myself. Like finding the gym and finding routine that made me feel good. It gave me a purpose. It helped me build confidence. It built trust within myself. It built self-respect, which I feel like self-trust, self-respect, they're just crucial to building a life that has stability in it. So I love that. Were there any other components or support systems or anything that you felt helped, support you on this path?
I would just say talking about it. Like I lived in shame for so long and I was so secretive about it. Like I was just like my biggest fear was someone finding out that I used to be an addict. I would like hide anything that had anything to do with NA. If someone from NA posted anything about a meeting on my wall or anything, I would instantly delete it. I hid it for so long. If I could go back, I would say find other people and talk about it. Don't be ashamed of it. Like we discussed earlier, it can happen to anyone at any time, and there is nothing to be ashamed of. It's literally a disease. So yeah, that's one thing that I found talking about it helps so much. And I waited 12 years before I started talking about it, unfortunately. And I feel like my journey would have been a lot smoother and a lot less lonely had I talked about it sooner.
But everything happens for a divine reason. And I think that, like, I think about even with my herpes journey, me keeping it hidden for almost a decade. I'm like, there was a reason for that, because I think that sense of loneliness that I felt and the depths of the shame that I experienced has catapulted me now into this position where I'm like, I really want to make other people feel less alone. And I know I've witnessed the compassion that you have for people that are struggling with addiction or who have struggled with addiction. So maybe, I mean, there's a reason why maybe your journey went exactly as it was supposed to, because now I think it built up all of that desire to help others within you. And that's what you're doing right now by coming on my podcast, by speaking openly. I know you shared on your social media last year, which was a very big step for you. So it's not, unfortunately, because I know it created hardship in your own journey, but I believe it's only going to catapult you that much higher. And it was all happening how it was supposed to. But I just get it. Like, I mean, addiction, whatever the topics are that we're talking about, it's just like the theme is the same. We don't talk about things because there's stigma. We feel ashamed about it. And then that shame makes us feel like nobody's going to understand. Nobody's going to relate to us. People are going to judge us. People are going to view us different. Keep it a secret. Keep it a secret. Keep it a secret. Keep it a secret. That's what the shame tells us over and over and over. And it is so scary to take that leap when you have all this buildup within you that shame has been feeding you a message for a very long time, for you almost a decade, and or for over a decade. When you finally are brave enough to speak something publicly, the shame is like, it just literally can't exist there anymore. It can't exist. There's nothing there to feed it. But it does require this great act of bravery and courage to like take that leap and say, I know that I've been believing this message for X amount of time, but I'm going to choose something different for myself because I want to help other people. So I commend you for that. And I love that about you. Have you ever had somebody, with all that fear that you felt about people finding out, have you ever had somebody react negatively?
No, that's the silly part, because it's been the exact opposite. Anytime I've shared that and I've been like maybe a little embarrassed or ashamed to share it, people are always, they just commend me, people are like impressed, like, oh, I like you even more now. And like for so long, I had no idea that would happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I remember when you told me, I was like, oh, I love you even more. Well, I don't,
That's exactly what you said.
I was like, oh, you're the strongest human I know. Like, that's insane. You overcame that, especially, like with the substance that you were addicted to and everything. I was just like, oh my God, like I knew this person had a bright light, but I didn't like, now this thing makes a bit more sense, you know? So to me, it made me love you even more.
Thank you so much for loving me.
So support systems are super, super crucial when you're trying to overcome addiction of any sort, right? Like I know that a family member of mine that has gone through treatment a couple times has explained it like, when you're trying to overcome an addiction, it's like playing Russian roulette with a loaded gun. And there are different things that you have in your life that help you remove bullets from that gun. So like healthy habits is one, but support system is huge because a lot of people that are that are addicted to substances, they're escaping in some way, shape, or form. And a lot of it's because of their upbringing or their environment or something along those lines. So a lot of people don't have a support system of any sort. And especially if you've been in active addiction for a while, a lot of times there's a lot of harm to the people in your life. So that might also be causing ruptures in your support system. So if you didn't, what is your advice to anybody that really wants to make better choices for themselves, is very interested in a life of, sobriety, but doesn't have their parents' house to go to or that support system that's super tight knit with their family?
Narcotics Anonymous. When I first started going, my best friend at the time had gotten clean before me, and she kind of paved the way for me. She would pick me up from my apartment in downtown Vancouver every single day, and we would go to this mansion in Northwest Portland. They had an NA meeting at a mansion. Every single day we would go to an NA meeting, and the people there were so kind. Talk about welcoming you open arms, and there is every walk of life there. I found a home there, and I stayed with NA for, like I said, about 2 years. And I found love and support and everything, everything I needed in regards to support through them. Because even though my family let me come and live with them for a few months until I could get on my feet, and I found an apartment in Portland, I didn't have anyone to talk to about it, because I didn't share with my family that hey guys, I'm coming down off of methamphetamine and I've been using meth for, the past 10 years. I never told them that. So I was very alone in that aspect. But NA gave me the support and the friendships and the love and the acceptance that I was searching for. And I used that as a crutch for, like I said, about 2 years. And then I kind of felt like I outgrew it. And like I said, I found fitness and moved onward and upward from there. But definitely recommend going to NA or AA. Nobody is too good for that. And
So I want to say that I don't know if I've shared this with you before, but as most of you know, and I've already previously stated in this episode, I have been impacted by addiction, but from the other side. And I think that for many, many, many reasons, Lisa, you were put into my life, sent to me to help me heal, to help me grow, to be a friendship I will have for the rest of my life. But I do think a very healing component of this friendship has been for me to love somebody that's not a family member that I know has struggled with addiction. It's like changed my perspective a little bit, because I think with my family members that struggle, I've been caught up in it for so long that sometimes I get really caught up in the anger and the frustration and the disappointment. And I sometimes forget about the compassion piece. And just recently, it was just over the weekend where I had reached out to you where I was feeling frustrated by something, and I could feel the anger boiling up within me, because I know there's still a giant vessel of anger within me when it comes to addiction, because it's not necessarily aimed at the person, it's just at addiction in general, because addiction has been impacting my life from the moment I was born, right? But I think hearing your story and just like even this weekend when I was feeling frustrated by something, I was thinking about the fact that what if this was Lisa struggling? And I know that I think because it's my family member and I've been caught up, like so closely caught up in it for over a decade, that I sometimes just kind of lose sight of the compassion and I lose sight of the person, if that makes any sense. And having you in my life has been this beautiful gift where I'm like, it's just another perspective, where somebody that I love very deeply, but I haven't been caught up in, I wasn't in your life when you were in active addiction, but I think about like, okay, what if this was Lisa struggling? How much compassion would I show her? Because I feel like my ability to show you compassion would be so much greater. And so then I'm like, okay, well, if I could show Lisa compassion, then I can show somebody else that I love just as equally the same amount of compassion, and just remember that the anger is not directed at them. It's directed at addiction itself, the illness. So to me, I think a huge one of the big reasons why we've connected and become best friends is because you were sent to kind of teach me this other perspective, And I think sometimes you're able to like be like, I know, but also like, I know you're hurting, but also this is also the other person's perspective. And it's super, super therapeutic for me.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's hard. I can be on the other side and I can show you the addict's perspective. And I don't excuse the awful behavior ever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever excuse that, but I can show you where your family member might be coming from, and a different perspective on it, and validate your feelings because they are always valid. So yeah, definitely helpful in that aspect.
Is there anything you would want to say to somebody who's struggling with addiction?
You're not alone.
I love that. I love that. So, final message for anybody out there that is struggling with addiction is just that you are not alone and that there is help out there for you. I will list a couple resources in the show notes if you are actively struggling or if you know anybody actively struggling. Thank you so much, Lisa, for being brave, for sharing your story, for sitting in this conversation with me today. And until next time, you guys, we'll chat soon.
Thank you.